$200,000 to the Trayvon Martin Foundation. It was a nonprofit set up by the slain teens' parents to provide support to the families that have lost children to gun violence. She gave $1 million to her baby daddy for, quote, live production, design, and media for his company. 5 times more to her baby daddy for his little startup, but she can only give $200,000 to the Trayvon Martin Foundation. We have BLM Incorporated on the agenda. Now, I haven't talked about this a lot on my channel because I just don't want the drama, to be honest with you. But I am not a huge fan of this organization, this movement. Some of you may know that, but I'm going to call it BLM Incorporated because it is a corporation. It is definitely a company. They take in large donations. They are now a nonprofit, and it's just kind of starting to come out recently. It's kind of been talked about in the past, but it's coming out recently where all this money is going, right? So these guys, the BLM Incorporated, it's kind of led by a few select people. These select people have admitted to being openly like Marxists and having their own very, very, again, publicly open political agenda as far as what they want to see with the country. Very Marxist viewpoint. They used to be on their website as one of their like key things that they want to see change, along with was it destructuring the nuclear family or something along those lines. It was a while ago. They took it down. But either way, they've been very open and public about their motives and things like that. BLM as the organization, as the company. Now, I'm not going to get into the actual movement. I think there's a lot wrong with the movement, and there's a lot of the movement is one of the reasons I actually left Minnesota, the Minneapolis areas, because of how the movement was handling some of the things there. But we can get into that either later or a different time. What I want to talk about today is really the money, where the money is going from this organization, all the money that this organization has raised. And it's starting to kind of come out because they have, well, a few years ago now, they have to start disclosing their tax filings or their tax returns. All right, so there was a time when, for a long period of time, the BLM organization, and I had to dig through here a little bit more, and maybe I'll see it when we go through this in a little bit. But for a long time, they were kind of under an umbrella of a different company or a different nonprofit. So they didn't really have to disclose their particular individual like tax returns or stuff. We're basically their financial records of where the money was going, being that they are a nonprofit, which is where things started to get a bit interesting because we started to find out what they're doing with all this money that is being raised. So I found an article here. Again, there's tons of different articles on what is going on here. This lady, Patrice Cullors, is kind of the main focus of a lot of this. She is the co-founder of this organization, BLM Incorporated. And what bothers me so much about this is, regardless of what you think of the movement, she's basically using a movement for her own financial gain. The fact that she's not in jail for this is beyond me. Here's one bit of it. BLM spent at least $12 million on luxury properties in LA, Toronto tax filing. It was kind of a weird title, but either way. So they're spending a lot of money on properties. This organization has raised a lot of money off the sympathy of people being killed, essentially, right? Because that's what happens. Somebody gets killed. BLM raises a big fuss in that city, right? A lot of people get upset. BLM comes in as an organization, gets everything fired up even more, gets all the activists involved. They raise a ton of money. None of that money goes to that community at the end of the day. They keep all the money for themselves, and they start buying houses and properties like this. So we have a $6 million Southern California compound. The one in Toronto is the funny one. Cullors, she used it as a place for a birthday party for her son, and a place to celebrate Joe Biden's presidential win in 2020. So they're just spending money, buying houses for their own fun, for their own doing. Where's the money actually going? Why isn't this money going back into black communities, right? It's Black Lives Matter. That's the whole organization. Why isn't it going back in to these communities? Okay, so in 2020 alone, they raised $90 million. Okay, They specify that they committed $21.7 million in grant funding to BLM chapters. So that's just different chapters of BLM around the country, both official and unofficial, and other black-led organizations. So they gave $21.7 million away to other black organizations. We don't know what they're using the money for, but BLM, this big giant fucking corporation, distributed that much of the money. Remaining balance for 2021 was over $60 million. They still had over $60 million of raised money that they don't, like, what are they doing with it? Black Lives Matter is still receiving fundraising. Although its initial upsurge last June may have slowed down a bit, the foundation said that individual donations in 2020 averaged $30.76, and more than 10% are reoccurring donations. So they're still actively taking in donations. They're only giving, what is this, about like 25% roughly of it to black organizations, official and unofficial is what it's saying, black-led organizations or BLM chapters. What are they doing with the money? Where is this money actually going? So, for example, we have, you guys know the story with Michael Brown. This is what Michael Brown Sr. had to say. So this would be, I guess, his father, as it relates to Black Lives Matter in the community and what's happened. He says, "I just feel like all of these organizations that were made for someone had lost their loved one, and they see that these parents are coming up with organizations already." So basically what he's saying is, when this happened in this community, the local community created their own fundraising, their own organization. BLM came in. BLM should know, or he's saying that they already do know that these communities have their own local organizations to help out. They should be able to get on board with those organizations and support them and their families. And they're going through this, and they're not. They're coming in and they're basically siphoning all of the donation money from these communities when these things happen. And they're buying freaking mansions with it. And we'll get into some other uses of their money, which is just kind of crazy. So what's interesting too is this Patrisse Cullors, the co-founder, she has recently stepped down as co-founder. I'm not sure what she's doing now, but I wouldn't be surprised if she gets in some real hot water for a lot of the questionable spending and uses of this donation money. Again, they're a non-profit. We got to keep that in mind. This is a non-profit, or at least they claim to be a non-profit. You can't just go buying properties for birthday parties for yourself and your son. And also, we'll get into with this mansion. I said there's a little bit more to this here. So they bought this mansion for $6.3 million. Black Lives Matter Global Foundation Network transferred millions of dollars to M4BJ to buy the mansion for equivalent of $6.3 million. So the BLM Incorporated is basically transferring money to another organization, which then buys these properties. I thought this was kind of ironically funny, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was very intentional. Anyways, this home is kind of some special significance. All right, I'm just going to read this here. Black Lives Matter transferred millions to a Canadian charity run by the wife of its co-founder to purchase the sprawling mansion that had once served as the headquarters of the Communist Party. This mansion used to be the headquarters for the Communist Party, and Black Lives Matter just paid $6.3 million to buy it. M4BJ, a Toronto-based nonprofit set up by Janaea Khan and other Canadian activists. Janaea Khan, I believe, is the wife of Patrisse. Yeah, Patrisse Khan Cullors. So that's her wife. They're lesbians, apparently. Yeah, I get this whole agenda they're trying to push. To me, BLM Incorporated is basically just a front for the LGBTQ movement and Marxist movement in general. Again, I'm not talking about the BLM movement. Like, if you can think of what you want to think about racial inequalities and whatnot. That's not the point of any of this. The point of any of this is the organization itself, their questionable spending practices, and their leaders, and what they believe in, and what their ultimate goal is with the organization. That's kind of what I'm trying to focus on here. So, a Toronto-based nonprofit set up by Janaea Khan and other Canadian activists snagged up the 10,000 square foot historic property for the equivalent of $6.3 million in cash in July of 2021, according to Toronto property records viewed by The Post. Khan is the wife of Patrisse Khan Cullors, a co-founder of Black Lives Matter Global Foundation Network and a self-avowed Marxist. She resigned from the group last year, a month after the post revealed that she had spent $3.2 million on homes in Georgia and Los Angeles. Con Colors vigorously denied that BLM donations were being used to buy the homes. So maybe she's actually used, maybe this is her own money, but where's she getting this money, right? Like, it's questionable. I'm interested to see where this goes, because I would not be surprised if in, I don't know, 20, 30 years, maybe less, that this goes down as this organization, like this goes down as one of the biggest scandals in history. Like the biggest swindlings in history. Just the fact that they're basically using this they're using this movement that is very racially charged, very racially motivated. There's a lot of passion and empathy and sympathy in this movement, and they're using that for their own financial gain. That's very much what it looks like, and I wouldn't be surprised that in a few decades, if there's like documentaries on this crap, once more and more comes out about it. All right, to purchase the Toronto property named by the Wild Seed Center for Art and Activism came to light amid mounting concerns over the U.S. activist group's lack of transparency in its finances. So this is Janaea Khan. That's her wife. All right. For BLM Canada to take money from BLM Global Network for a building without consulting the community was unethical, tweeted Sarah Jama earlier this month. For BLM Canada to refuse to answer questions from young black organizers goes against the spirit of the movement building. So they're almost fighting within their own community now, or within their own organization, is what it looks like to me. It's just crazy that so much money has gone into this. And this lady right here has basically used it for whatever she wants. So here's another interesting article. This came out. This is all coming out recently. This was all in the last few days. A lot of this like new stuff is coming out. BLM paid co-founder's baby daddy nearly 5 times more than Trayvon Martin's foundation. So I guess the Trayvon Martin Foundation. Again, this is regardless of what you think the outcome of these cases or any of that should be. It just goes to show like what's going on with these people that are running this organization. So the organization gave $200,000 to the Trayvon Martin Foundation. It was a nonprofit set up by the slain teens' parents to provide support to the families that have lost children to gun violence. All right, so they gave $200,000 to Trayvon Martin's foundation. All right, they gave $969,459. So let's just round it up to a solid million. They gave $1 million. She gave $1 million to her baby daddy for, quote, live production, design, and media for his company. 5 times more to her baby daddy for his little startup, but she can only give $200,000 to the Trayvon Martin Foundation. Which I think that's not a bad, if you're talking about children a victim of gun violence, a lot of that gun violence is within their own community, and that's sad. It is really sad. No child should be a victim of gun violence, in my opinion. There needs to be better like safety training and better policing in these communities, and that's just my opinion on the matter. But I think that maybe that's not a bad organization. Who knows what they're using the money for, but I think it's better than giving it to your baby daddy for a startup when your whole organization is a nonprofit founded around the principles of racial justice and equality. You're only using the money for your selfish means. All right. So there's just a few articles. I have these all linked in the link down below. You can go to the link tree and see all the links for today's show. I'm just curious to see more about this. I really haven't seen much about Black Lives Matter for a little while now, for a couple of years, or at least a year and a half. They've been kind of quiet. I think it's kind of interesting. Right before the election, there was this big BLM push, with at least from the organization side, and now that the Democrats are in office, you don't really hear anything about it anymore. Like they're not really getting anything from, like, the BLM side isn't getting anything from the Democrats, and the Democrats aren't really getting anything more from the BLM side because they've been kind of quiet. So they had this, it just seemed from an outside perspective that this organization, as well as the political party, had a very kind of tight relationship. You don't really see that anymore. At least it's not talked about in the media. I don't really see any articles or things about it. I don't really see any articles or things about BLM doing anything specific for any communities or building any schools or building any low-income housing, or I don't see BLM actually putting in any tangible things, and maybe that's just me not being in that in that world as in depth, where I don't see the articles or see the things happening. But what I do see is them spending money, at least the organization spending money, this lady here, on things for herself, for her baby daddy, and for her own wants and desires, and giving very little to other people. So very interested to see where this goes in the next decade or so. That another black individual will end up being shot by a police officer. It's almost statistically impossible for it not to happen again, just like another white person will be shot or another Indian person will be shot. Like, it's going to happen at some point. So is the organization going to be as loud and in the streets as they have been in the past 5 years, or are they going to be go into hiding for a little while and reemerge again? Like, I'm kind of curious to see where this all goes, given the little bit of financial heat that they're in now, that these financial records are kind of starting to come out, and even within their own organization, within their different chapters, are being called into question on their practices. So, but I guess overall, my opinions on the Black Lives Matter movement and the organization, I think the organization is one of the worst organizations ever to exist. I think it is a complete and utter a scam. I think these people should be locked up. I think their agendas that they push and they peddle, they're very public, they're very open and blatant about it, and I disagree with all of them completely. I don't agree with Marxism. I don't agree with a lot of the socialism kind of aspect on what they push. Now, that's a different debate, but I don't care for the organizations. I think they're shady. I think the people that run these things are very greedy, very shady. I don't think they actually care about Black lives. Hot take. I think they care about their own public image. They care about their own lives and their agenda more than actual people in these impoverished communities and actually helping. I think they care a lot more about their fancy lifestyle and their messaging. And as far as the movement, I think the movement, I used to be on board with the movement a while ago, like probably, 5-6 years ago. But after watching them literally destroy their own communities, I can't anymore. And I forgot to show you this. I'm going to show you guys some video footage. This is why I left Minneapolis. This is why I left Minnesota. I shouldn't say the main reason. It was one of many reasons. But this is a big one. This is a big reason, is because this is what the people were doing to their own communities, to their fellow peers, in search of some justice. It was truly kind of sickening, if you ask me, but we'll watch this here. It's like a third world country. I remember when they boarded all the buildings up.
Yo, is this you,
around
bro?
there.
Is this you? Do I know how to put it in reverse? Bro, how old are you, bro? You 13? Damn.
This is what it was like. I don't know how much of this was actually Minneapolis, so I know you guys are gonna come at me in the comments. That wasn't Minneapolis, blah 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 blah. But I could pull up videos of just Minneapolis. Trust me, I lived there, and the attitude of these people, that what they were doing was right and was just, kind of just blew my mind. So I don't really agree with the movement. I definitely don't agree with the organization. That's kind of my stance and my 2 cents on it. I don't think that makes you a racist if you don't agree with the movement or the organization. It's just that's just my opinions on it. I don't see any logic behind what they're doing, and I definitely don't see any logic behind this organization and what they're doing. I think they're a bunch of frauds. I think there's a lot better ways to help black communities, and I think that actually really do need help. I think this is an issue that needs to be addressed. And it's not just black community. I think it's more poor communities, but it doesn't mean there's not white people who aren't in the same position as this, or Mexican people or whoever, right? It's everybody, because it's America. But I definitely do think there's these types of communities in these areas that do need help and do need to be addressed. And I don't think that what this organization is pushing and what the movement is pushing is the answer. And I don't think that's the right answer. I don't think it's going to actually help. That's my opinion. But you guys can have your opinion. You can let me know what you think down below. So cheers.